Hi, welcome to my quilting beehive. I'm Michelle and I'm here today to tell you about making the Maltese cross block, double Maltese cross block that we are making in the Colchester Mill Marvelous Mystery Quilt this month. You do have a choice this month. You can make this block or you can make the maple leaf block. Your choice, whichever one you decide to make. This one is a fun block, a little challenging because we do have all those points to meet in the middle, but I'll give you some tips to help you do that. First thing I want to do is talk about printing your templates. You must print your template to actual size or 100%. If they are not actual size or 100%, they will not be the right size and your block will not come out the right size. When you measure, there is a 1-inch cube on the paper. When you measure, it's super important that it's completely an inch. And if you look at mine right here, it's about a 32nd of an inch too small, a 16th of an inch, maybe a 16th of an inch too small. It's just a smidge too small. And that, you wouldn't think it would be a big deal, but it is. When I line up my ruler across my block, it should be 3 7/8, and it's not quite 3 3/4. It's a little less than 3 3/4. So this is too small and my block will not be big enough. And this one right here should be 4 1/2 and it's only 4 1/4. So that 1 inch must be a full 1 inch. Print it out, check it, make sure those pieces are what they should be, or your block will be too small when you're done. That is crucial. So that was a bad printing. It was print to fit to page instead of 100%. And you can see right here, this one was printed to 100%. It's exactly 1 inch. And my pieces are going to measure exactly, that one's 3 7/8, almost to the 4. And this one is 4 1/2 tall right here, and it's exactly right. Make sure your pieces are right before you cut any fabric and do anything. When you are ready to cut your fabric, I'm going to give you a little tip. I like to use freezer paper when I'm cutting anything with templates because you can use the waxy side of freezer paper to stick your template right to the paper. So we're going to come over here right to an iron I have set up, and I'm going to take template A, and I'm just going to show you. If you place it on a piece of fabric, I have a scrap here, I'm just showing you on it, and take an iron. You don't need any steam. Make sure the waxy side of the paper is down, and you can just hit it with the iron and it'll stick right to your fabric. You don't have to worry about it slipping or sliding or moving when you do that. I've already cut out my red ones that I need, but when you need to cut out your templates, you can stick that paper on there and then use a straight edge. And you can decide if you want to put the ruler on which side of the paper. Just make sure you're not cutting any paper, because if you cut a little bit of paper each time, your templates will get smaller and smaller. And you can just turn it and go around. And I did, when I made my red ones, I stacked up 4 pieces of fabric and I cut through a few at a time. And I had it stuck to the top one. And if you have it at the edge of your table where you can walk around and not move it, that stack of fabric won't shift on you. And just use a small ruler and trim those pieces even with the paper, and the little tip at the end here too. And what's great is the freezer paper will just peel right off, and you can reuse this again and again, many times until it gets fuzzy. If you cut a lot of them, then you're going to have to make a new one. But you can use it again and again to cut all of your pieces. When it's time to cut template B pieces, you're going to use a strip set, and you can see there's a dotted line on here, and my small triangle is the yellow in my fabric, so I always want the small triangle on the yellow side. And so I can bring this to my iron and give it a quick hit to keep it from shifting. Doesn't take long at all, just a little heat melts that wax just a smidge and helps it stick right on there. And then I'm going to use my ruler, make sure it's not cutting any paper, it's just lined up right next to the paper. And your second one, right there. Now we only need pieces with the yellow on the bottom, and you can see, let me peel that off. You can see that if I do it, I have to skip a space. If you wanted to make another block and have some blocks for future use in another project, you could turn your template around and make a cut to make an opposite piece, and you could have another block that you make that has the yellow here and the tan here. Today I just need my yellow one, so I'm not going to make my alternate block, but I could if I wanted to. I'm just going to bring my template to the iron and hit it. Because it's a strip set, you do have to do one at a time. I don't think I would stack them up because you will have to worry about them shifting, and you want that line to be even. So one at a time, and that'll be a nice scrap you can put in your scrap bin. Right there. And you're just going to repeat that until you have cut all the pieces you need. Once you have all your pieces cut and ready to go, you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're going to put together them in pairs with one piece A and one piece B ready to go. You'll always want to sew with your smaller one without the corner on it on top. You're going to place them so the flat edge lines up like that, and you'll see down here there is a little, it overhangs, it's a little longer than the red piece, and there's a little dog ear sticking out. When you sew, you're going to be sewing right to that point, and that's like a little extra that will be in the seam allowance. You bring it to your machine. I had it on a small stitch for those maple leaf blocks in the other video, so let's use a standard stitch and a 1/4 inch seam. You do want a nice 1/4 inch seam. Watch your seam allowance, make sure you have it accurate. And you're just going to sew along there. And you can chain stitch. And what's nice, we have our seam allowance pressed so that the seam is going into the machine and you won't have to worry about it flipping and folding up. And you can chain piece them, which means you put one after the other right through the machine. Make sure they're lined up. And just keep going until you've sewn all your block pieces into quarters. When you press these, you want the seam to go towards the piece B, template B piece that you just added. So you want to put that on the top and press your seam. Now these were cut on a biased edge because they are triangular. So don't spend a lot of time stretching it. Be very careful with your iron to give it a good press. And you'll see it's going to line up with the red right there, and you'll have a nice piece. Make sure each one is pressed the same direction. It'll help all the seams in the end. And continue until you have them all ready to go. Once you have all your pieces ready to go, you are going to bring them back to your sewing machine and sew your quadrants into halves. And you're going to put them together like that. We have our seams pressed all going in one direction, so we'll be able to nest our seams when we put them together. I'm going to take one of each, and I'm going to put this one on top, and I'm going to line up down here where those seams will be able to nest. We have them going. You can use your fingers to smooth it out so there's no lump and make sure they're nesting together nicely. And I do like to pin there to make sure they stay in place. Nested together nicely. Again, there'll be a 1/4 inch dog ear sticking out above this end, and when you sew, you're going to sew along that seam, bringing them together, and that nests all the way up. It nests the whole length of that seam. Bring it into your machine and use your accurate 1/4 inch, and you're going to sew all the way down. Be careful when you get here that those stay nested. When I get here, that seam allowance got caught on my foot, so I'm going to make sure to flatten it down before I keep going so it doesn't get caught up. And I don't want to hit my pin, but I'm going to leave that pin in there as long as I can. There we go. And you'll notice when you do this that you'll end up with a 1/4 inch space here before the point, and that is very important. You'll need that to make sure you can match the points together later. Sew together your other one, and then we'll bring them to the iron. When you go to your iron and press them, the seams are actually going all in one direction. They're going to spin around the block. That will help us reduce bulk in the end. So make sure you follow the pressing directions in the pattern. And we have our 2 halves. We're just going to rotate one around It's kind of an unusual shape because it's not quite a square, it's a odd angle. But when you put them together, you'll see it will make a square block. When you put them together, this is that tricky point we need to match. Now this seam is going that way and this seam's going that way, so they will be able to nest, and it's important to match those points. I know there's some people who like to use a glue pen to stick them. You can do that if you like. I still like the 3-pin method. I'm going to put my pin right in the point here, and you'll see it comes through right at the tip of that triangle. And then I'm going to put it at the tip of this triangle right here and put it through. And I pull that pin all the way through to bring those 2 points as close together as I can. And I'm going to use the 2 more pins to hold those seams right where I want them to be. One on that side holding the seam allowance, and one on the other side holding the seam allowance. Make sure it's secure and it can't move. And I like to take that 3rd pin, and that's going to be right where I sew through, is where that pin is. And then I'm going to line up all my pieces. Just like before, I have a dog ear hanging out here, a little 1/4 inch piece that's going past it. And on this end, there's a 1/4 inch going past. And we'll be sewing across this from end to end. Use your accurate 1/4 inch seam so your block is the right size in the end. When you get towards that center area, slow down, make sure all your seams stay flat. Pushing that seam allowance down in there. There we go. And I'm going to pull out the 1st pin. That 2nd one is the one I'm going to cross right through that pin tip. It's right there. I'm pulling the pin out right before it hits the needle. Do a couple more, and then I can pull out the last pin. And then finish your seam all the way down to the end. And then the moment of truth, you will open it up to see how your points do, if you need to add a little more. It looks like I could sew a little bit closer. I have a little bit of gap there, so I am going to make that seam allowance just a hair more to fill in that space. I'm going to start on my seam line, and I'm just taking a slightly bigger seam allowance right there to bring those closer together. There we go. When it's time to press it, you will want your seam allowance to go around in a circle, kind of like when we did our 4 patches and we spun the seam so the center would flatten. So you're going to want this seam to go towards the red and this seam to go towards the red there. I'm going to do that from the front. I'm using my fingers to press it towards the red, and then I'm just going to take a nice hot iron and put it in there. And I don't want to stretch it, so I'm just holding it. I'm going to spin this around to do the other one. Towards the red, towards your corner, whichever your color is, like that. And once you have this started, then you can take that last bit and work on flattening the middle right there. There you go. Thank you for watching my video on the double Maltese block. I hope you enjoyed making it. If you are making the Marvelous Mystery Quilt, you can choose to make this one or the maple leaf block. Remember, you're not doing both of them, you're doing one or the other. You might want to practice this on scrap fabric first. Those points can be tricky. Try one out on scrap fabric, see if you like making it, and then decide which one you prefer to make. If you're not doing the Marvelous Mystery, it's not too late to join. We're about halfway through, and you can join the Marvelous Mystery. Details are in the description below.